Extremely dangerous Hurricane Lidia has made landfall very close to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, as an extremely strong Category 4 hurricane. Good evening, I'm Mike Naso with this Tuesday night update on the tropics. In the eastern Pacific, we had quite an intense hurricane make landfall this evening along the Mexican coastline. This is Hurricane Lidia. It's a compact storm, but it rapidly strengthened from the Category 1 that it was when I spoke to you last night, all the way to a solid Category 4 hurricane making landfall along the Mexican coastline here. Now, here is the latest on Hurricane Lidia. Lydia, as of 6 p.m. Mountain Time, was at 20.1 north, 105.5 west, winds 140 miles per hour. The Hurricane Recon aircraft was flying out there and determined that Lydia really strengthened this afternoon from a Category 2 all the way up to a Category 4 hurricane, 942 millibar pressure, very, very intense. That's close to the pressure that Hurricane Ian was in Florida last year when it made landfall near Captiva Island, and that is the pressure of a very intense tropical cyclone. Lydia is moving east-northeast at 16. Now, that's good news because the quick motion over these high mountains should dissipate it. So Lydia will be a hurricane around 11 o'clock midnight tonight, and then by noon tomorrow, it's going to dissipate here over mainland Mexico, but not before having significant impacts. Here's a beautiful true color RGB image of it. Right as the sun goes down, note the landfall there. The eye was bubbling. It was not in a favorable upper level environment, but what happened was the interaction with the trough helped to kind of spin the system up, sort of like an ice skater pulling her arms in as she does the pirouette spin there. And that's kind of what we see with hurricanes sometimes, favorable trough interaction. Along with those very warm waters off Mexico, we have the landfall of a Category 4 hurricane right in here. Only 30 miles from the center are the hurricane force winds, so areas of Puerto Vallarta are going to get into hurricane winds. Hopefully, the Category 4 winds or even the Category 5 gusts will lift off the ground and not impact you, but we can't be too sure of that right now. The area of landfall, Las Panitas, is to the south of Puerto Vallarta. So again, anywhere in that area, you're probably talking about this region here. So all these communities, as well as Puerto Vallarta, are in the path of a Category 4 hurricane that has made landfall. Now, a Category 4 hurricane, what kind of damage are we talking about? Well, when I spoke to you last night, Lydia was a Category 1, capable of some damage, thought it might get into the Category 2 range. Well, now that it's a solid Category 4, that is devastating to catastrophic damage potential with the wind impact. Now, right at the coastline is where you have the storm surge impact and the threat of high water rises. Here's another look at the satellite imagery. Note that the eye is starting to fill in as it moves inland, so the weakening is going to be very quick. You have no idea. This thing's going to go from a Category 4 to a 3 to a 2 to a 1 to a tropical storm, a tropical depression, and then it's going to dissipate as it pulls over land. So the wind won't be a problem, but you're still going to have heavy rainfall threat, and we are already seeing some landslides. Now, this was the key message from the National Hurricane Center on Lydia as of 3 p.m. Mountain Time. Lydia expected to make landfall as a major hurricane. We already know that that has happened in the hurricane warning area. We have a landfall of a catastrophic Category 4 hurricane. Heavy rains will likely produce flash and urban flooding. Like I mentioned, we're already seeing some of that. Possible mudslides, landslides in areas of the higher terrain across those areas of Mexico in the state of Jalisco, where the hurricane just made landfall. We also have the dangerous storm surge near and to the south, where you have the onshore flow. With a Category 4 hurricane, you could have one heck of a tremendous storm surge. And large and destructive waves on top of that. And then obviously the swells from Hurricane Lidia are going to continue to cause dangerous surf and rip currents along the west coast of Mexico and the Baja California Peninsula for the next day or so, propagating away from the hurricane. The good news, like I said, is it's a small hurricane, but that doesn't mean it's not intense. Here's another look at the infrared. It's starting to fall apart. Even right before landfall, the ice starts to fill in. It's obviously being impacted by that wind shear, but like I said, because it was moving in the same direction to the northeast as the wind shear, that kind of helped tie it tighter. Like when you have a loose knot and you pull both sides and it tightens it. That's almost what happens with some of these hurricanes. Now, the good news is it's weakening very quickly, but the bad news is all of this energy is already pushing ashore. And as of now, operationally today, it made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. We'll take a look at the damage and see exactly what any observations are and what the hurricane does to know its true intensity. But right now, by our best estimate, it was strengthening right up until about the moment of landfall, 942 millibars. So as far as Eastern Pacific hurricanes on that side of Mexico, based on wind speed, this is tied now for number 3 of all time because there have been so many 140 miles an hour, but Lydia now joins the list. Hurricanes of Category 4 strength. We've only had on record going back to the 1950s or so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Category 4 hurricanes make landfall on the Eastern Pacific side of Mexico. Only 7, and Lydia is one of those 7. So that's not a lot. You know how many hurricanes we get out there? So this is a relatively big event for the Eastern Pacific coastline of Mexico. Hurricane Kenna 21 years ago in 2002 was 140. Very, very nasty storm for areas of Mexico. We had one back in 1959, 1957. Hurricane Aniki, that was actually in Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands there in 1992. So for the Mexican coastline, this is probably tied with number 2 or 3 of the strongest winds that we've ever seen. So again, a very intense hurricane making landfall there in areas of Mexico. Here's the water vapor image of the entire Pacific and Atlantic there on this side. Hurricane Lidia, look at how it's getting smushed like a pancake. Very unfavorable. Look at that line I drew. That does not look like your classic Category 4 hurricane, but it was right around that eye that we had those impacts. The system we were watching in the Gulf, between the wind shear and the shear from Hurricane Lydia, there's no chance that this thing develops. It's going to bring some moisture to areas of Florida, though, but all of this should just pool across into the Atlantic. You always wait and see if anything gets going and kind of moves out to sea. That's always a potential possibility. This wave here is a high chance for development. This is still expected to become a tropical depression or storm and take a track like that over the next couple of days. We'll keep a close eye on it. And of course, as we get later and later into the year, we'll start to watch this area here of the Caribbean because you never know when the next hurricane is going to come out of the Western Caribbean from that area near Central America. We saw one in August, Hurricane Idalia, come on up, loop around, slam into Florida. So we're going to watch all of this. But right now, we are watching a Category 4 landfall on the Eastern Pacific side of the basin there, and Mexican coastline getting slammed near Puerto Vallarta from a very powerful hurricane, Hurricane Lidia of 2023. This one's going to pack quite a wallop as it pushes into Mexico as a Category 4 storm. I'm Mike Nasa with the latest on dangerous Hurricane Lidia, and I'll talk to you next time.